What's up, Ragin Nation? How's it going? This is Alex Yu, and you're watching TF4 Talk. This is just the web series we're talking about Transformers Age of Extinction. This is episode number 22, and in this episode, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a comparison between Transformers Dark of the Moon and Transformers Age of Extinction. Now, you're probably wondering, why do we got to talk about Transformers Dark of the Moon and compare it with Transformers Age of Extinction? Well, as a matter of fact, I think that both sequels are the same. Now, I don't mean that they're the same as in they're identical, but structurally they are the same. And ultimately, they are the same. And I know you're going to tell me that no, they're not the same. They're different. The characters are different, and there are a lot of variables that make the story very different. Yes, you are correct. You are 100% correct about that. But if you look at the bigger picture, they are ultimately the same. Now, when I say structurally the same, what I mean by that is beginning, middle, and end, and all the wonderful things that you learn in English class about how to do a book report. I'm talking about plot, characters, conflict, climax, and conclusion. They are pretty much identical, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of TF4 Talk. Now let's get the obvious stuff out of the way, okay? When I talk about obvious stuff, I'm talking about first of all, the critics' ratings. Let's go with Rotten Tomatoes, okay? Transformers Dark of the Moon got 36%, and Transformers Age of Extinction got 18%. And for good measure, let's just talk about, let's just throw in the rating for Transformers, which was 57%, and also Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, which was 19%. What does that mean? Not a whole lot. Transformers fans won't really care about ratings, neither do I, because I enjoyed the heck out of all of the films, okay? Now, let's talk about the other obvious thing to compare it with, and that is box office, okay? And, well, the production budget for both films are Dark of the Moon, $195 million, Age of Extinction, $210 million. Running time, 2 hours 34 minutes, 2 hours and 45 minutes. Domestic gross, $352 million for Dark of the Moon, and $245 million for Age of Extinction. All right? Worldwide gross, $1.1 billion for Dark of the Moon, $1.08 billion for Age of Extinction. Foreign gross, $771 million for Dark of the Moon, $841 million for Age of Extinction. So now that we got the obvious stats out of the way, the obvious comparative figures out of the way, let's talk about comparing Dark of the Moon with Age of Extinction, and let me tell you how they are similar. Let me explain that to you. First of all, I want to tell you that I'm not comparing Age of Extinction with all the other ones. And by all the other ones, I mean the Transformers, the first movie, 2007 film, and also Revenge of the Fallen, mainly because the first film was experimental. Nobody knew what to expect. In fact, Paramount and Hasbro didn't know what was going to happen. It was all an experiment and ended up being the best one in the series, in my opinion. Now, Revenge of the Fallen was the first sequel, and this is where their intention was to make it bigger, louder, and with bigger explosions and with more robots. That was their main intention. It made it those goals made it the worst sequel out of the entire franchise. When you talk to a number of fans, the majority will tell you that it is the worst one in the franchise. I agree. Now, that is exactly why I'm comparing Dark of the Moon with Age of Extinction, and the main reason why is because Age of Extinction followed the exact same successful formula as Dark of the Moon. Dark of the Moon is the most financially successful installment in the live-action franchise at $1.1 billion worldwide, and Hasbro and Paramount agreed that if they want to repeat that success, they have to follow the exact same formula. And the only thing they're going to do different is bring in different characters, just like how we always expect them to with every sequential sequel. All right? So they did just that. change up the characters, give them a different story, which was essentially the same. We're talking about world domination, but just change up the characters, add a few twists and turns here and there, which is, you know, pretty standard. But at the end of the day, they're following the same narrative structure, and that's why I believe that Transformers Dark of the Moon and Transformers Age of Extinction are identical when telling the story. So let's just start off, okay, with how this is all similar and how it plays out in similar ways. First of all, let's talk about the opening sequence. In Dark of the Moon, you have the Cybertron sequence and the moon landing. In Age of Extinction, you have the dinosaurs and how the creators cyberformed Earth and thus killing the dinosaurs. Okay, now the next comparison that I want to make is something I'd like to call human discovery, and that is NASA discovered these alien ship parts on the moon. Okay, now in Age of Extinction, humans discover the dinosaurs, the cyberformed dinosaurs in Antarctica. Both of these events are decoys. They both play out to be decoys. Okay, that ship part that they discovered in the Ark, that was a decoy. Okay, the dinosaurs that they discovered in Antarctica was a decoy. What you know about what killed the dinosaurs has nothing to do with Dinobots. Okay, they were both decoys. Okay, so now the third thing that I want to compare is the introduction of the new villain. They introduce Shockwave near the beginning of the movie. They also introduce Lockdown at the beginning of the movie, and it's a very, very brief introduction for both, and they're both very, very cool. Okay, and that's how they would introduce their new villain. Okay. The fourth thing that I have is that there are both humans working for Decepticons. Okay, this is once again Hasbro and Paramount feeling that doing something like this is part of their successful formula. They believe that audiences probably like the idea of Decepticons working with humans, so therefore they decided to repeat that with KSI and Lockdown's I guess their thing, you know, the thing that they got going on. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Now the fifth thing that I'm going to compare is that humans have help uncovering the mystery of the moon landing through Seymour Simmons. Okay. Okay, that's what happens in Dark of the Moon. In Age of Extinction, humans help infiltrate KSI and find out the truth about their company. So we're using the help of humans to find out the truths about what the lunar landing was about and also about what KSI is about. Okay? So the conspiracy is going on and it's the humans that find out the truth about them. Okay? So this is we're kind of you're seeing the similarities, okay? Now, now in terms of the structure, both films kick into high gear after the 1 hour mark. Now, this is a very general thing. The movie should kick into high gear after the 1 hour mark. At the 1 hour mark in Dark of the Moon, you have the freeway chase. After the 1 hour mark in Age of Extinction, you have the KSI raid. Now, both of those action sequences are structured like in very similarly. They're both made up of 3 parts. In the freeway chase, it's a 3-part sequence, which is made up of the chase, the Mexican standoff, and the Sentinel Prime double cross. Okay? In the KSI raid, it is also made of 3 particular sequences, and that is the KSI raid itself, the chase / Galvatron fight, and then the Lockdown capture. Okay, that's when Lockdown appears, and then he reveals himself, and then that's how it works out. Okay, the next thing is the arrival or rather, let me just put it this way. In Dark of the Moon, the space bridge scene is where you see the Decepticons bringing their world to Earth, or rather bringing their minions to Earth. Okay? in Age of Extinction, the lockdown ship sequence is where they bring the humans into their alien environment. Okay, so it's kind of like a reverse thing going on. In Dark of the Moon, the Decepticons bring this. I mean, the space bridge brings the Decepticons to Earth. In Age of Extinction, lockdown ship is where he brings the humans into his environment. Okay. The next comparison that I'd like to make is that there's the capture of humans, the damsel in distress. Okay, Soundwave captures Carly in Transformers Dark of the Moon, and Sam has to get her at all costs, which creates for a human mission. Okay, in Age of Extinction, Lockdown captures Optimus Prime, but in doing so, he also captures Tessa, and because of that, Cade and Shane have to go on their human mission and rescue her at all costs. So we got the damsel in distress element there. Okay. Now, the next comparison that I'd like to make is the new bad guy, okay? The new bad guy is a Cybertronian called Sentinel Prime, and he brings his army using the space bridge. So this is Cybertronian technology. Now, the new bad guy in Age of Extinction is a robot, or rather a Decepticon built by humans, and he brings his army using human technology, and that is in the form of the prototypes. So we got Galvatron using human technology to build his army, and then we have Sentinel Prime using Cybertronian technology to bring his Decepticon army. Okay, so more and more comparisons. You're seeing how this is playing out now. All right, you see what I'm getting at. Okay, now. Of course, we always got to have a final battle. In the very first Transformers film, it was the downtown battle. In the second one, it was in Egypt. But in Dark of the Moon, it was in Chicago. Okay, now there's always some sort of significance why it needs to take place in a major city. For example, in Dark of the Moon, it takes place in Chicago because that is where Hotchkiss Gold Investments headquarters is. All right, and that is of course Dillon's company. Okay, and that's essentially where the Decepticon warships invade. They invade Chicago. Now the battle in Age of Extinction takes place in Hong Kong because it is what Megatron considers the largest. I mean, that's the city with a huge population, so they can detonate the cyberforming seed. Okay, so. That's the they both have battles that take place in a major city. Okay, the next comparison that I like to make is the whole Cybertron and Earth thing. Okay, so in Dark of the Moon, the Decepticons want to bring Cybertron to Earth. Okay, in Age of Extinction, Galvatron wants to turn Earth into Cybertron. Okay, now next comparison is aerial sequence. Now, some of you might have been thinking that, well, in Transformers Age of Extinction, there was that awesome drone ship chase. Well, in Dark of the Moon, there was also a drone ship chase, but it didn't involve Autobots. It involved humans in wingsuits, the Nest soldiers. They were on wingsuits, and they created for a very, very cool drone ship chase sequence. In Age of Extinction, they had the aerial chase sequence, which consisted of drone ships chasing after Autobots piloting a drone ship. So, essentially, they both have drone ship sequences, which is the aerial chase that takes place in both films, okay? Now, in both films, they both have a useless action sequence. Now, I know that's kind of harsh for me to say that it is a useless action sequence, but when you really think about it, in Transformers Dark of the Moon, the driller building sequence doesn't need to be there. Okay, if you took out the driller sequence, it is the same movie. They had a mission, and that is to shoot the pillar that is on the cupola, okay, from a higher building. So they got up on the higher building, and they attempted to shoot it. I mean, they got up in the building in an attempt to shoot the pillar from a higher elevated position, but at the end, they ended up not doing it, just because the building got taken down by the driller. So nothing happened out of it. Nothing came out of that at all. So therefore, considering that it doesn't change any of the events in the battle, it doesn't need to be there. Now, as for Age of Extinction, the useless sequence in the final battle would be the lockdown suckage scene, okay? And whether or not it's there, it's the same movie. It is very exciting, and as a matter of fact, I think the driller sequence and the lockdown suckage sequence are both very, very exciting, but at the end, it proved nothing. They got away from it, and it didn't change any of their real geographical location. They were just running in circles, driving around in circles, and they ended up back at the same place. So they are both useless action sequences, okay? But they're both very exciting, okay? Now, with all of the sequels, you have to bring in new characters, new significant characters. In Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, it was the Constructicons, which are always very exciting for fans, but always a letdown. Revenge of the Fallen, it was the Constructicons. We were all excited to see Constructicons, but they were taken out in a very cheap way. In Dark of the Moon, it was the Wreckers, okay? It was exciting to know that there was a new Autobot commando faction included in the Autobot team, and it would have been great to see, you know, what they can really do and why they're considered such commandos and why they're labeled as the Wreckers. But at the end, they weren't given a whole lot of screen time, and they're no different than all the other Autobots. As a matter of fact, if you've taken them out, it doesn't really make much of a difference. In Age of Extinction, it was the Dinobots. Now, the Dinobot sequence was really cool, and I was really excited for all the time that they were there. But the Dinobots are pretty much the Wreckers of Age of Extinction. They're there for reinforcement, and even though they were only there for, 5 minutes of the movie, the last 5 minutes of the film, and they did a lot, but they were invincible, and at the end of it all, it was a bit of a letdown when we saw them, because the movie was marketed in a way where we thought that we were going to be seeing a lot of Dinobots, but at the end of it all, it was kind of a letdown, okay? We wanted to see more, but we didn't get it. But when they were there, it was awesome. Just like how I thought the Wreckers were awesome when they were there, but we didn't get to see a whole lot of them, okay? All right, moving on. The next comparison that I'd like to make is that Paramount and Hasbro felt that they needed to make the Autobot deaths, more meaningful. Because in Revenge of the Fallen and in the first Transformers film, when they killed Jazz in the first one, it was like, oh, okay, that was weird. And then when they killed RC, and when Jetfire died, it was like, whatever, who cares, right? So they decided that they needed to make it a little bit more meaningful. So in Dark of the Moon, they killed off Ironhide, and they made Q's death sequence very, very sad. So that was very, very, very shocking, and also it gave us an emotional reaction, okay? In Age of Extinction, they did the same thing, and that was with Ratchet. Ratchet is a character who we've gotten to get to know more about. We got familiar with them in the previous 3 films, and then they decided to kill him off, thus making his death more emotional. And that's what they felt was one of the more successful storytelling elements in these sequels. So that's why they decided to include those in. Okay, now let's talk about the final battle. And that is, essentially, the final battles are pretty much the same. Because there are a lot of Autobots, and also you have humans helping out the Autobots. Especially in Transformers Dark of the Moon. You have a lot of human help from the Nest team, the Navy SEALs, the Marines, the Armies, the Air Force. There's a lot of help from the humans, okay? And there's a lot of Autobots involved. Now, in Age of Extinction, the battle is kind of condensed to a more personal battle. All right, so you have Bumblebee and Hound and Cade versus all the prototypes. Okay, as opposed to all the huge Autobot team in Dark of the Moon plus the U.S. military. Okay, so essentially it's still an Autobot and human collaboration. Okay. Now, here's something that I always feel is kind of plaguing all the films, not just Dark of the Moon, but not just Dark of the Moon and Age of Extinction, but all the films, and that is Optimus always comes back late. Okay, I mean the Autobots are really never the Autobots, including Optimus Prime, are really never around when you need them. And even when they do show up, they always show up late, when it's too late. Okay? And when Optimus does come back in the sequels, he always comes back with new technology. And he can always fly. I guess the studios really felt that, having Optimus being able to fly is a great story element. It makes Optimus awesome. The fans are pleased about the fact that he can fly. In Revenge of the Fallen, he joins up with Jetfire's parts and he can fly. In Dark of the Moon, he has the flight tech. In Age of Extinction, he can fly. He gets booster rockets after he gets the upgrade. Okay, so in all the films, Optimus is always late in that he always comes back with new technology. Okay, all right. Now we got a couple more comparisons to go, and that is, in Dark of the Moon, Optimus is about to die on his way to killing Sentinel. Optimus is about to die from Sentinel Prime, but then he gets saved by Megatron. Okay, so essentially Optimus is, he's about to lose in the final battle, but then someone always comes back to save him, and in Dark of the Moon, it was Megatron. In Age of Extinction, the fight was over. Okay, Optimus had lost. He was impaled by his own sword. Lockdown owned him. But Bumblebee and Cade came to the rescue. And because of that, he was able to beat Lockdown. Alright, so essentially, Optimus Prime always gets owned, but then, because of some help from some third parties, he is able to win in the mono fight at the end of the movie. All right. Now here's just a little bit of a nitpicky thing, and that is Sam and Cade, or rather the human main characters, always get a gun pointed at them. Okay. In Dark of the Moon, Dylan has his gun pointing at Sam. In Age of Extinction, Kelsey Grammer's character points his gun at Cade. Okay. And there you really have it. That is really all I have to say with the comparison. So now you see what I'm talking about. These films are structurally the same. And the reason why Paramount and Hasbro wants this is because they saw that Dark of the Moon made $1.1 billion, which is essentially a success to them. They don't care about what the critics have to say. This is ultimately a business, and they're in the business of making money. And if they find that doing what they did in Transformers Dark of the Moon works, they will do that exact same thing with Transformers Age of Extinction, which they did, but all they gotta do is change up some variables with the story, and then also change up and also add in some new characters. Okay, now you're probably thinking that there's gotta be some things that are different, or there's gotta be some elements which make this Transformers sequel different from the previous Transformers sequel. Yes, you're absolutely correct. There is something, and that is not Transformers. Okay, what I'm getting at is that it's the human sequences that make these Transformers sequels different. There's a reason why Transformers Dark of the Moon clocks in at 2 hours and 34 minutes, and there's a reason why Transformers Age of Extinction clocks in at 2 hours and 46 minutes, making it 12 minutes longer than Dark of the Moon. And that is because there are more human action sequences. Okay? There are 3 human action sequences, which are just human-on-human action sequences in Age of Extinction. In Transformers Dark of the Moon, there are no human-on-human action sequences. It is all 100% human and Decepticon or Autobot collaboration. Okay? In Age of Extinction, you have the Texas chase, which is, Cade and his family being chased by a cemetery wind. So that's a human-on-human action sequence. And then moving on, you have the elevator sequence in Hong Kong, which is Su Yu-ming, which is Li Bingbing's character, and Stanley Tucci's character, Joshua Joyce, being chased down by cemetery wind. okay, CIA killers, okay, full-on human-on-human sequence, okay, and then you have Mark Wahlberg's moment, hero moment. Mark Wahlberg, they're paying him a lot of money to be in the movie. He's a big star. He's a big celebrity. He's got to have his hero moment. Okay, so that's why you have the rooftop chase in Hong Kong. This is the moment where he owns Titus Welliver's character, which makes it another human-on-human sequence. 3 human-on-human sequences. Dark of the Moon has none. Age of Extinction has 3, thus making the movie longer than the original. But other than that, they are structurally the same. They are ultimately the same movie. All right, when you look at it from the bigger picture. But which one do I prefer? I prefer Age of Extinction just because there's more robot screen time and, there's way more characterization. And there you have it. That's all I gotta say in this video. I'm really here to talk about how I believe that both films are structurally the same, which they are, and I wanted to explain that to you. Now, if you know of any other similarities that these 2 films, or rather 2 sequels have, let me know in the comments section below. And if you completely disagree with what I have to say in this video, let me know your feedback in the comments section below. And that's all I gotta say in this video. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, The Ragin Nation. Also follow me on Twitter at Ragin Nation. My name is Alex. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace. Of the entire episode was a final battle, and that was really, really exciting. It was action-packed, great